Who you trying to get crazy with this scene? Don't you know I'm loco?
Well, we burned another. I had another '59 Cadillac.
That was an advertisement, right?
We burned it, and George Powell his mother had a lovely house in Bel Air on Avenue of the Helenas, and it's where Marilyn Monroe died was on Avenue of the Helenas. So 1,000 feet from where Marilyn Monroe died. I apparently decided to burn a Cadillac in George Powell's mother's driveway, and
how'd that work?
It worked good. The police came, the fire department came, and
what's happening, everybody? We're back finally. And once again, it's time for that Lower Left podcast. I'm Bobby Ruiz, aka Bobby Tribe. Almost forgot my name. It's been so long. I'm right here with my man Johnny B. Good.
What's up? It's been a really long time. I forgot how to get here.
Yeah, that intro was kind of rough.
Yeah. Everybody who missed the intro, it's not going to be on the podcast, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I banged
at least funny on our side.
Yeah, it hurt on mine. But wow, today we got like straight legend, like.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And then we got
then me. Is that how it works? I was like, what's the thing? Yeah. Then there's this guy we pulled off the road.
Yeah. So and then we got the great Jim Dacian. Like this dude's also super badass.
I just appreciate letting me in the building.
No, yeah. I appreciate you being here. And for those that don't know, Jim and I are co-curators of what's the name of the show? Street Legacy.
That's right.
Which just recently got extended to October 2nd. But, yeah. And, man, the intro, I'm going to try to, So, this guy changed the face of skateboarding single-handedly. Like, this guy's imagination changed the look, the image. He's worked with the best of the best in skateboarding. I was honored to have worked with them and met him through some mutual friends, the Gomez's and the people at Hurley. Craig Stecyk.
Yeah. That's exciting.
It's pretty. I'm excited. Like also a good friend of mine, an amazing photographer, one of my favorites. We got the homie Uncle Tone in here keeping things quiet out in yeah, but Stecyk's here. And I know it's and I do feel honored that he's here with us today speaking and talking to us, because I know he doesn't do a lot of this, and he's really particular about what he does and how he lets himself out there.
I got no choice because my Packard parts.
Yeah.
Can't get 36 Packard parts without dealing with him. So
they're being held hostage.
I'm on my best behavior over here.
Yeah, well, welcome, Craig.
Thank you.
Man, where should we start, Jim?
I think we were just chatting before you even got in here about some of his iconic photos and just where he was. I think Craig's beginning is so fantastic.
Yeah.
And how he influenced skate culture and surf culture, and a little bit of that story.
The people that he's worked with, like in skateboarding, and if you get it, is that book still available? He has a book called C.R. Stecyk III, Dogtown, The Legend of Z-Boys. If you can't find this book, can you find this book still?
Yeah,
you can?
It's in. We just got a check for it the other day, and I think Glenn Friedman is out there pushing it in New York right now.
This is all your photography, correct?
Mine and Glenn Friedman's, yeah.
You want to start, Jim?
Sure. So this is I'm with Craig's background. I mean, I grew up skateboarding, and his imagery was so important to my identity and the kids who are doing graffiti in my neighborhood. And if you're familiar with the Ratbones logo, or not even the logo, but the original tag that it was, there's a famous photo of Craig squatting next to a surfboard and the Ratbones tag right above him. And that to me is like, that's vintage Craig, right? That was you at just at the crust of like, as all these cultural things were happening in Southern California. And I don't know if
I think that picture probably took place. It was taken by Tony Freakin, and I think it was originally for a Rolling Stone piece that Eve Babbitts did on me, which ended up being a colossal boondoggle.
Colossal boondoggle.
Welcome
to the world of Craig Stecyk.
Eve is one of the what's the right word? Patron goddesses of popular Los Angeles culture, and so she was kind enough to write up my extracurricular evening public art efforts, and which were interpreted as being vandalism by some.
Yeah. Were you brought up in where were you brought up in? Were you brought up in Venice, Santa Monica?
I'm from Ocean Park, which is between. Actually, the original name of Venice was Ocean Park when Abbott Kinney, the founder of Venice, started it. His first development was Ocean Park.
So you're from Ocean Park?
Yeah, I'm actually technically from Ocean Park Heights.
So you're beyond the OG from Venice. You're like an OG from Ocean Park. I guess that's fair.
When they started Venice, it was still named Ocean Park.
Yeah.
And then they changed it to Venice of the Americas later and whatnot.
But there was something about the aesthetic of that area that you were drawn to, though, too, because it was dilapidated and.
I was working out of the Ocean Park Pier ruins, and it was free space, and there were other people there. James Ganser was there. Rick Griffin and Jimmy O'Mahony had a space there for a second, and there were numerous other people that were. I was a harvester, so I would just go look for good pieces out there.
And you would. At what age did you start participating in skateboarding, or start skating or surfing, or just hanging out with the people in that area?
Well, I was, technically I was born in Santa Monica Hospital. So, and my mother's doctor was Dr. Auberg, which was one of the original Auberg brothers. And
who is?
And then if you get into the guy, Kemp Auberg was a legendary Malibu surfer, and he was one of the sons of the Auberg brothers are typically Denny Auberg, who wrote Big Wednesday, Kemp Auberg, who was a flamenco guitarist and a legendary surfer, and the blues playing third brother.
So you're basically saying ever since you can remember,
I dropped out of the slot.
Surfing and
first
skating.
Fight I ever had was with an Auberg. They slapped me on the ass
because you were born.
And I've been in conflict with the brothers ever. And John Milius and Denny wrote Big Wednesday, and I could remember.
So you started surfing before skating.
It was called sidewalk surfing when I started skateboarding, and it came out of surfing very much so. There was a tremendous surfing culture in Santa Monica for many years. It's still there, but it was there, from the 20s, 30s on. It's where when the Hawaiians came over here, such as Duke Hanamoko and George Freeth, who presaged him, they were, lifeguards in Santa Monica and Venice and whatnot.
At what point did it start being known as Venice? Like, was it more common knowledge that it went from Ocean Park? Was it Oceon Park, right?
It was Ocean Park, and then he did Ocean Park Heights, and then he did, the Venice of the Americas. When he split up, when Abbott Kinney split up, the founder of Venice, quote unquote, split from his partners, he took the swampland to the south and did Venice of the Americas there.
So then, I've seen photos of that time, and I think the photos that I seen were actually your photos. It was in the Z Boys documentary. I believe most of those were your images.
There were a number of there were pictures in there, yeah.
Yeah. But we'll get to that whole program. But at what time did you see that area really start to change and gravitate towards being more of a? Because it for me, I imagine it as being like a really hardcore area in regards to like skateboarding and that whole culture that existed down there because of the dilapidation, and that it wasn't the most pleasant place for a lot of people to be during that time. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of a dream lost. Like this architect and this designer went in and built this or attempted to build? Is that what happened down there?
No, Abbott Kinney commissioned Italiante kind of Renaissance post Italian environment with colonnades and canals and gondoliers.
But the canals were cool, right? But
Yeah.
what happened down by the beach? Like, did it fall apart right away, or how long did that?
Well, I think the Venice Pier burned down in 1948, 47 or something, and
Damn.
Ocean Park Pier survived a little longer. That was the Lick Pier. That was where Lawrence Welk broadcast, and Richie Valens played there. The Doors played there. A number of different people.
Yeah. So was it the 70s that you started to see a movement, like a real skateboard movement?
Well, I think the first
From surf to skate, I mean?
a lot of that surf to skate stuff, a lot of surfing stuff came out of there. Pete Peterson, who was probably the premier surfer of the 30s competitively, had a building on Santa Monica Pier, and he built surfboards and whatnot, camera housings, and he was featured in the MGM shorts in the movies. It was, the Pete Smith theatrical shorts starring Pete Peterson, and he doubled a lot of people in the movies and whatnot. Was a Pacific Coast surfing champion for a number of years.
Like in the Elvis movies and shit?
Even then, he was working on Elvis. Actually, Pat Dorian, who was Shane Dorian's father. Shane Dorian's a big wave rider of some repute, even to this day. Mm-hmm. But Pat Dorian doubled Elvis in Blue Hawaii, so that's probably close enough for you.
Yeah.
And Jimmy O'Mahony may still have Elvis's St. Christopher medal from that movie.
So at what point? That's the water. It's like somebody's turning on the hose outside and it makes a weird noise.
I thought it was liquid
might have
death.
been could have been Johnny's stomach.
Yeah.
But I think so. At what point did you start to see them? Because we're all pretty aware that the skateboarding culture was highly influenced by surfing styles and
there was a lifeguard, L.A. City lifeguard named Larry Stevenson, who founded a brand called Makaha Skateboards. Mm-hmm. He called them Makaha Surf Skate. He was the first guy to use that term. Mm. And it arguably was...
To use which term?
Surf skate. Surf skateboards. Mm-hmm. And that was what he called them. And the first rider was a guy named Jimmy Fitzpatrick who went to...
and was the majority of this movement occurring down there where you were at, you think? Santa Monica?
Well, he was a Venice lifeguard. Yeah. He worked out of his garage. What
year do you think this was?
63, 64. And he started the Makaha brand, and then they were on Princeton Drive or something, which was across from the Dewey Weber shop on Lincoln Boulevard. Carroll Shelby was at the end of the block, which is where they made the Shelby Cobras and the Ford GTs, among other things.
Damn.
One thing is, mine's like a trap. You notice that? Like every name and every location. It's so darn impressive.
Skipper Boy Emblem, who was one of the co-founders of the Zephyr brand, which was what the Z-Boys were affiliated with, actually branded the Phil Edwards Makaha boards on Princeton Street for Larry Stevenson. The first skateboard I was ever sponsored came directly from Larry Stevenson, handled it to me. So, I was, tricked out and, tricked out.
What year was that, you think?
63, 64.
No shit.
Yeah.
Huh. So when do you think, that would really qualify as, that's truly street culture. It's something that's born in garages and sidewalks. When do you, what were things that you saw that made it seem like things like skateboarding were becoming more professionalized?
No, Stevenson. Larry. Larry was a lifeguard. My mother knew him through swimming. What's the right word? Competitions and whatnot, because they all worked out in the pool, and my mother was an athlete of some sort. And as I mentioned, my doctor was one of the Auberg uncles or fathers. They were two brothers that were doctors. So I grew up knowing those Auberg brothers. The ones that you see in the surfing magazines are the younger brothers. They're all from the Palisades. They had offices in Westwood.
So the transition is what I think we're talking about. Like at what point did you see the skate culture become really significant? You're saying the early 60s already?
I think it came out of that. I mean, there were surfers before
but
that.
It was very experimental, and those were still clay or steel wheels?
They were clay wheels, probably that Stevenson, the Makaha brand had clay wheels.
Yeah, but they weren't producing that many boards, though. They couldn't.
Well,
I mean, it's like, when did other...
Well, compared to, but that, that product category hadn't, 6 months before didn't exist.
Oh, totally. And that's why I think it's so experimental at that point. Then when other people start copying it and...
Yeah, I mean, down the street, Carroll Shelby's taking AC Bristol bodies and putting Ford motors in them.
Yeah.
And in the back room, they're really building, what cars are going to go win Le Mans.
Yeah. So was it localized, like right there in that area, or was it like going out to other areas of LA, like skateboarding around that time?
Well, they're in Malibu. There were very few. I mean, it was a private ranch for many years, and that might be the dominant small wave surf spot in California. It's probably why they named Chevys after it and stuff. And even Barbie is named after Malibu, a type of Barbie. So, I mean,
don't you have one of those?
Yeah.
And typically,
you were referring to the person behind me. Yeah. That's why I'm pretty sure.
But typically people that lived, the early Malibu surfers that were locals up there, since so few people lived there.
Yeah.
Pete Peterson.
Wow, I didn't know that. So Malibu was basically one big ranch?
Yeah, it was a private ranch, and Pete Peterson, who I mentioned that lived on the pier, was one of the first guys to surf it. Tom Blake, who was a lifeguard in Santa Monica, who guarded with Duke Hanamoto at the swim club, was the first guy to surf up there. So
besides what you've done with your photography and your directing things and working with, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what you've done. And I know how you are, dude.
I get blamed for a lot of stuff.
But I know Craig, and we're gonna have to pull the shit out of him because he won't. It's like, and you could see the images and you'll know what we're talking about when we start to talk about what he's done. But quite the historian, man. Like, have you written anything about this history? Because there's not a lot of people that I'm sure there's people that do know this history, but I was just schooled. Like,
he's a primary source in early so many of these street culture aspects. So it's awesome.
If you would have really got confused, my 9th grade girlfriend lived in Stanton McDonald Wright's old studio. And Stanton McDonald Wright arguably was the first American artist who had founded an international movement, which was called syncretism, which he did with Morgan Russell, meaning, it was a European conceptual avant-garde movement. His brother, Willard Huntington Wright, and he's related to that Huntington. It's Huntington Beach and the railroads. But the Wright brothers, which were not the airplane brothers in Santa Monica, they were art brothers, were, both from there. So anyway, I had a 9th grade girlfriend, and Stanton McDonald Wright was enough of a maverick that he had castings of his face on the walls of the studio. So I'm hopelessly confused in terms of eros and aesthetics,
Okay. So here's the thing. I'm gonna tell you a little story of my own. When I first met Craig, I knew who he was, of course, and I was introduced to him working on a project at Hurley, and then him and I were put together to curate the original Legacy shows through Ryan Hurley, Bob Hurley, Paul Gomez, Dakota Gomez, and just everybody that was around during that time. So Craig would kind of go off on what he just said, something like that. And I would completely be like, huh? Like, he would just go off on these extremely just these topics or these subjects, and we'd start here and then it would just go all over the place. And I told, I don't know if it was Ryan or one of the guys there, I'm like, hey, but sometimes I don't know what the fuck he's talking about, bro. And the guy goes, don't feel bad. Hold on. He's going to drop a gem. And what he'll do is he'll say things that make a lot of sense if you go back and you review it mentally. But then there's just like, he'll drop a gem on you and you'll be like, holy fuck, did he just say that? That's Craig. Like,
so hearing that, Craig, how do you react to that comment?
Everybody makes mistakes.
See, that's not a mistake though. He knows exactly what he's talking about, but it gets so intertwined, and so like you said, he has this memory. Everything's all intertwined, and then all of a sudden it'll come out, and you'll understand it.
Yeah,
like that's the gem of it all. Like you'll kind of, oh, okay, I see what he meant by what he was saying 10 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago, and how that corresponds with this and that, and then you don't know until the end. Like, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
But that's kind of what I'm getting right now out of what we're hearing from. It's like there's so many different things that are intertwined and go together with this same. We just touching the very beginning of it all.
Absolutely, and so if we move this forward a bit, like for folks of my age, Powell Peralta was the brand that made a huge impact on changing how skateboarding was advertised, how it was seen, how it was consumed around the country, around the world. You're a big part of that. How did you go from the streets of Venice to working with Powell Peralta and using that as a canvas for your work?
Probably Stecyk Peralta, meaning that we knew each other from the beach. We knew each other through skateboarding, and he was affiliated with Zephyr, which I spent a lot of time there for a brief period of time. The Zephyr shop was in business for a couple of years, and the Zephyr team, which was recognized by a lot of people as an important a genesis for some, or
absolutely,
or a group of people that were over emphasized at the expense of other poor people who didn't get the attention they got, and I get blamed for the attention. So
good for you.
Well,
I mean that's
speaking
that's
another.
I think it would be an honor to be blamed for that. Like that's and just to put it mildly, but prior to like I said earlier, is you changed the face of skateboarding and the way things were marketed, and you came up with some concepts and ideas. But for Powell Peralta and going into like Search of Animal Chin and stuff like that. But prior to that, you're working with Dogtown, Z Boys, the Zephyr team, traveling and working with these icons that became legends and skateboards, and need I say like Jay Adams, like who became a good friend of mine also before he passed, and you having been there and experienced this whole movement that completely changed skateboarding. Do you think that J-Boy was one of the guys that really developed styles and techniques and movements that maybe, I won't say by himself, but really, really changed skateboarding and took it to another level? Or Z-Boys as a team? Or
I think people in general give Jay a lot of credit.
I mean, I do. I don't. Well, I saw what some of the other guy, Tony Alva, was also doing some really amazing things too. And then later on, you were fortunate enough to work with people like in the early years, Tony Hawk and Lance Mountain and Tommy Guerrero and Steve Caballero, and these were all people that you have amazing images and I'm sure stories that are, like insane to go with. But so you transitioned out of Z Boys into Powell Peralta then, kind of.
Stecyk went off. Stecyk, I think, won the world title for juniors by virtue of placing at the the first public contest or professional contest in Los Angeles. And he went to Australia to tour for 6 or 9 months, and then I think Zephyr, the team, essentially disbanded in the 6 months he was gone, arguably because of supply and demand. Everybody wanted to reinforce the riders. And so a lot of guys ended up on different teams, and Peralta came back and decided to ride for Gordon and Smith, and I worked with him at Gordon and Smith.
Oh, you did?
Really?
What'd you do there?
I didn't know that.
He did the Warp Tail 2 there and Warp Tail 1 and stuff. I did advertising for him. I also did advertising for GNS Surfing and had, overlap. I had Michael Henson and Skip Fry and Larry Gordon. I knew worked with those guys. And Jay's an interesting guy because I'd known Jay longer than any, I knew Jay longer than any of the other. I know Skip Emblem for a long time too, but Jay was Kent Sherwood's stepson, and Kent Sherwood was a laminator at Dave Sweet Surfboards, and I worked at Dave Sweet. Dave Sweet was the first guy, he was the inventor of polyurethane foam cores. So that's the first modern foam surfboard that was sold, was a Dave Sweet from Santa Monica, California.
Wow.
And Jay's stepfather went on to do the Z-Flex, and he did the fins on, which were foam and fiberglass on the Pegasus missile, which was the first vehicle to fly 8 times the speed of sound with wings.
Wow.
That's a different level right there.
I love that left hand. That was great.
See that? Yeah.
Yeah, but I always knew Jay. I mean, I met Jay with Filane, which I knew Filane's mother from the beach, and then, and Jay was hanging out. Then when she started dating Kent, he was working at Dave Sweet, as I were, and so the first time I saw Jay skate, he's 4 years old on Olympic Boulevard, took the shop skate, went out of the traffic, and was laughing. And she was, as any mother would, be a little concerned. And she looked at Kent, who looked at me, and I was supposed to go get him out of the traffic, which I thought. Then they thanked me, and then everybody blamed me at the same time. It was like that the entire time I knew
So
Jay.
at what point did you pick up a camera?
I didn't have a camera. I did not photograph that instant.
No, but I mean, at what point in your life did you pick up a camera and really start
my father
shooting?
had a number of cameras and had a darkroom, and my father had been in World War II, which was not a particular accomplishment of his, but he was a quartermaster assigned in the Signal Corps and whatnot, so he had a lot of equipment and a lot of access to camera stuff. And at the end of World War II, he oversaw the destruction of a lot of the German and Japanese photographic equipment that they brought back at the end of the war. So
we had cameras. You had cameras.
So
around,
so when you were a kid, you started taking.
Yeah, I used to borrow my dad's cameras, and probably by the time I was 12, I had wrecked, damaged, or shall we say, substantially altered. Enough that he said, well, you're not, you got to get a job now, son. This is a teachable learning moment. Mm-hmm. You don't take my cameras. And then, so I picked up bottles for several years off the beach for the 2-cent deposit, and he took me to Lloyd's Camera Exchange in Hollywood, California, and I bought a Pentax from Lloyd. And I broke that one, and then he laughed.
So did you start? What were your first subjects? Like, what did you start?
I wanted a camera because I wanted to document surfing because I was interested in how the boards worked and stuff. And by shooting, if you shot pictures of the tail, the water patterns as they released off the tails and stuff, I thought you could see what they were doing, which was true. You could, but,
And then from there, you went into skate. Shooting skate stuff?
It's what we did, yeah. That was just our basic activity. And nobody else was shooting it, so there seemed to be a need, or an interest.
Yeah. A lot of the images that are the most iconic from those days are your images. And as far as like Z-Boys and these early images of a lot of these skateboarders that came out of that area, of style, not just style, skate style and skateboarding, but the style of, I don't know if it's dress, maybe it is, but you see everything in those photos. You see hair, and you see, just interaction, and you see skate styles, and you see all these other forms, but and then how they moved along. And one thing that I caught on to, like, with Dogtown especially, and then much later with the guys from Suicidal Tendencies and this whole Venice movement, is how they adapted a lot of the Chicano styles, a lot of the gangster letters, the style of dress. J-Boy loved, to dress like a homeboy, to look like a homeboy. He loved wearing, Pendletons and, headbands and Dickies, but then he'd skate like that, and he was accepted like that. And a lot of what you've seen as far as, later on, like I was saying, they definitely developed their own style Dogtown and the Muir brothers, Jim and Mike, but they moved it into a direction that was unique in itself. I think, connecting it with punk rock and connecting it with skateboarding. There was a lot of the influence there, but then there was some things that seemed a little more, for lack of a better word, like just liberal, like free flowing, not a lot of, and the imagery that, you get those old Suicidal Tendency records and you look at the artwork on the back or the photographs of the drawings of flyers and how it all kind of just melted together. And it was a very, influential time. And that whole movement, I think, became very, influential in the skate industry with streetwear and shout out again to Jim Muir and Dogtown, because I have a shit ton of respect for them, and I've become friends with Jim years back, and we've done some projects together. But that was an exciting period. But prior to that is what you did with Z Boys, and then later on the Powell Peralta thing, and what I mean, talk a little bit about the Z Boy era. Like, what was that experience like, and what was that, talk about that, like that whole time period. I guess it's try to wrap it up and not wrap it up, but just kind of explain, like, fuck, man, that was such an iconic time for skateboard, and not just skateboarding, but culture and street culture in general.
Well, I think something happened in the 70s. Didn't they have a drought in Southern California, much like today, where they're having a drought, and they're so they emptied all those swimming pools in the Bel Air fire in 1962, 63. Went through, and there were a lot of abandoned houses that had swimming pools. We benefited from that because you could, whatever level you could skate on clay wheels in a pool, we got to do. So I think those guys came into it honestly,
just looking for new terrain to skate.
Well, I think it was easily accessible, identifiable. The Baldwin Hills fires, there were a bunch of pools up there.
Were these the first group of kids, you think, to skate pools?
Well, I think that people of my generation, Herbie Fletcher, for sure, there's documented photos of him in pools. There's photos I took in that period of other people in pools. Danny Bear, the Hilton brothers, Jay Riddle, myself, Johnny Freeze.
What year do you think that was?
64, 65.
No shit.
A lot of people were, a number of people were skating pools.
In the early 60s?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
But there was, that was such a brief period that, quote unquote, it was a teenage fad. And, 64, it was the must-have toy. And by 66, people were buying Chevelles. Come on.
Yeah. I remember my first skateboard, it was Black Knight. Had clay wheels. It was a wooden board. And I think I probably, if I remember correctly, I'm going to call that around 73, maybe 73, 74. And I used to always talk about that board, and then Dakota Gomez found me one, and he got me a real clean one. It was practically brand new. Still had the sticker from the store on it. I still have it, but, prior to that was the steel wheels, right? Before the clay were the steel wheels. But this was the 70s, and then J-Boy and the Z-Boys, that was, when was that, Jim? That was like late 70s?
Probably 74.
Early 70s?
A year before I was born.
I think the Del Mar Nationals were in 1974. And,
yeah, you're probably right.
Del Mar.
Yeah. And they were, because I think Jay was about my age. But and then Search for Animal Chin. Did you direct that? Did you shoot that? How? And I know that a lot of those ideas, these ideas that came from you, right?
I actually does. I was the stunt double for Animal Chin, which was a total.
I heard that.
That's why they never found you.
Yeah. I totally. worst experience you could have to be dressed up in a
Yeah.
culturally insensitive, I look like a Vietnamese refugee, which is not how anybody from China dressed, by the way, but
Yeah.
And I'm the one that had to go in Chinatown in San Francisco where people identified with a more classic Chinese culture. I was the guy that they selected to dress up like a 70-year-old Indo-Chinese gentleman and skate down the hill where I promptly hit a rock. And having been raised, I'd done other stunt work in, movies. The first rule is that you don't move until the director tells you that, the shot's open. So I skating down the street, I hit a rock. Everybody that's watching it thinks it's, a 65, 70, 80-year-old Chinese gentleman. And he gets thrown to the ground and he's not moving. Well, I'm not moving because I'm waiting for Stacy to say cut.
So was he directing?
Yeah, Stacy was directing, and there's probably it looks all I can look up is I see all these poor, kind Asian people trying to render aid to me, and I'm going, "Hey, it's a movie. I'm okay. I'm actually a white guy in this suit." And very it was an odd moment.
So for some reason, I keep thinking there was a car. Something blew up. Did you blow something up at some
cut the
point?
top off a car.
Somebody cut a 59 Cadillac up on.
That's right.
Yeah, that actually technically was my car.
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah. What's that story? Because I remember hearing something like somebody blew something up, or you had an idea to blow something up.
Oh, we burned another. I had another 59 Cadillac.
That was an advertisement, right?
We burned it, and George Powell his mother had a lovely house in Bel Air on Avenue of the Helenas. And it's where Marilyn Monroe died was on Avenue of the Helenas. So, 1,000 feet from where Marilyn Monroe died.
Wow.
I apparently decided to burn a Cadillac in George Powell's mother's driveway. And
how'd that work out?
it worked good. The police came, the fire department came, and apparently Mrs. Powell came. And unbeknownst to me, no one had bothered to tell her we were doing it, which tells you a lot.
Wow.
This is probably why George is successful in life, because he's maybe fearless. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it was a 59 Cadillac.
Yeah.
Did you cut the roof off, or you just lit it
Oh,
on
no,
fire? You blew
that
it up?
one we just lit up.
And that was for a print ad, right? Am I right in remembering that?
Yeah, we shot stills in it.
So that was your idea.
Well, it was my car.
Anything for the shot, right?
George is, he goes, "What do you think?" I think we should burn a 59 Cadillac, and he goes, "Well, really?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, I'm not going to pay for that." And I said, "Well, I've got a car. We'll burn it. It'll be great."
And that was
He goes, "I guess I could do that."
Sheesh.
That's awesome. And that was a Guerrero probably ad, wasn't it?
It might have. No, it was probably Ray Rodriguez.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah, there's actually Ray was sitting on the hood when we blew the car, which proved, Ray and I got along well. He trusted me. Peralta knew me well enough not to trust me. And
So with images like that was really different for skateboard advertisements, because it wasn't just a skateboarder doing a trick, right? It was. I mean, that was part of your move in aesthetics and design at that time. I mean, were you real conscious of that, I don't want to take a photo of him just jumping out of a pool or a ramp. I mean, we're going to light a car on fire.
Well, I understood propulsion and, fire stunts. So,
But you also must have understood marketing and advertising and shock value and things like that, because not just what was done with Z-Boys, and I keep saying this because it was so important, is what you did with Powell Peralta and the work with the images and the video that Powell Peralta was putting out during that time. It was just the whole of what skateboarding is, who skateboarders are, how they interact with each other, how they interact publicly. Like there was things in those videos that they're not the most law-abiding, perfect citizens. You know,
There might be some inadvertent truth
maybe
in there, but I had a real
but crazy shit they do.
Well, early on, I had a reel-to-reel black and white Sony half-inch tape recorder, which I used to make. And you couldn't even play them back on another machine. You could only play back for many years. You could only play. If you recorded something on your Sony half-inch tape deck, it would not play back on the reel-to-reel half-inch black and white tape deck that was made before it or after it, the assembly line, because the information was so idiosyncratic. And then they got the NAJ standards, which is meant that it was playable on another machine, and then it got to cassettes and stuff, and it became much more wider. So I was playing around my studio doing ridiculous art tapes and sending them off. One copy, you would send it to the museum wherever they played it and never see it again. And they would play it on their thing, and the stuff would die because there was one copy of it. And Stacy was in my studio enough. I think he was interested in that. And eventually we started doing some stuff. The first meeting we did the Bones Brigade video show or something, which I think was certainly the first thing we did there. I don't think anybody else had done one. And they had a premiere at Frank Hawk's house, which was, Frank was Tony Hawk's fighter pilot dad. And
that's right. Bones Brigade was before In Search of Animal Chin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the one that.
So we had the world premiere at Frank Hawk's house, and he had and nobody owned a cassette thing. So we made, Frank had rented, I think, a Betamax, Betacam deck we had probably a dozen people in this guy's living room, and that's what it was. And that's what it started from.
That's perfect though, isn't it?
And Stacy is a director. He's got a Jerry Lopez film coming out, opens right about now. Mm-hmm. And, he's worked all the way through on it. So we might have just been ahead of the curve.
Might have.
A little bit.
Yeah.
These are only videos that impacted people's lives. And
completely. I remember seeing those, and it completely changed. Not just the way people skated, the way people dressed, the way people did their hair, the way
they talked to each other,
spoke to each other.
Common language.
Or, you see these dudes skating off of roofs for the first time. You're like, what the fuck?
Yep.
Or just doing crazy shit that just took it to another level, and then people built from there. So I mean, you saw shit, and not just saw it, was able to document things that whole Powell Peralta team was like. Who was your favorite? You got to pick one, Craig.
Well, we should all pick our favorite.
One. I got one.
Yeah, me too.
I liked when Jesse Martinez was on the team, which was a short period of time because he defended his honor and was cut from the squad.
Because he defended his honor.
Yeah.
How was he cut?
I think the management had
really?
Yeah, apparently. You can't defend your honor in certain parts of the Midwest or something. Skate demos. So, yeah.
You got video of that? All right, go, Jim.
Mike McGill.
Really?
Easy. Imagery was really important to me. I love VCJ's graphics, and he's still local here in Encinitas.
Tommy Guerrero.
Yeah. Tommy's great.
The first time I saw it, it was a Thrasher magazine. And me, being a Mexican skater kid, I'm like, who's that little skinny badass? And he was bombing hills in San Francisco and just do street skating like a beast, like winning contests. I think he had just won a contest. And that's when I'm like, this dude. And then I just really started paying attention to how he skated. And, they were all sick in their own
amazing.
Right. And then to see where they progressed to. And that was, a blessing, man. I can only imagine the shit that you've seen, Craig. Like, I could only imagine the stuff that you shot and photographed. And we're fortunate to be able that you share some of it with us here. But, I would say that, you have contributed and influenced, and a lot of this is because of not just what you documented, but what you created in lines and borders that you pushed to take it to another level, to not just, like Jim said earlier, shoot the guy skating the pole or shoot the kid doing a trick. Like, adding other elements to it. But from Z Boys into Powell, and then I met you while you were at Hurley, so there's a huge gap there. What did you do after Peralta, between Powell, Peralta, and Hurley?
I don't know who knows. I don't know what
It's a big black hole.
That's a big one.
No, I'm a documented victim or beneficiary of a blunt force head trauma. So I have
There you go.
yeah.
Is that what happened?
Well, quite decidedly so. Yeah.
And we shared. We at the same time we both had plantar fasciitis.
That's right.
Oh wow!
You should have seen us.
You took a left turn.
Yeah, we did.
We trained
We
together.
did. We
We
did.
trained
We were like,
together.
"Fuck, dude! How do we take care of this shit?"
I feel
When
so left
when
out.
we're at Hurley. Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, hopefully you get it soon. No, you can be a part of that.
Coming
crew.
at you,
So
Chief.
so
Coming at
here's
you.
something else. So now
Yes.
you've seen a lot of these kids that were early teens, people like Tommy and Tony Hawk and Lance Mountain and Mike Miguel, and all these guys are now professionals. They're adults. They've worked beyond just skateboarding and into the industry, and we all know what a rock star, and well-deserved rock star somebody like Tony Hawk has become. And beyond that, where skateboarding is today, would you have ever imagined it getting to the magnitude that it is now and as huge as it is now?
I wouldn't have, but if I would have, I probably would have done something else. But I was just always trying to entertain myself and people around me. I think that's.
And you're kind of known for that. You won't. You would rather do something that you're interested in, down to do, feel passionate about, something that you enjoy doing or you're really about, than take the check. And I've heard that about you a couple times. Like you're only gonna fuck with stuff that you really believe in.
Well, I'm so happy. The check here is so generous that I of course was not at all.
You got a check?
Yeah.
Dude, they just tried handing him money right now, and it's like it's hard to. Yeah, but this
where Johnny and I are from, if men hand you money on the street, it's not a good thing.
But you've the images go beyond surf, skate, beach, and as everybody already knows, if they've seen Street Legacy, is one of my favorite images because it hits home as one image of somebody that and I think you knew all these dudes, and you see a wall and it's full of graffiti. It's obviously a neighborhood, someplace that's active. There's a 64 Impala, 3 homeboys drinking beers, kicking back on the car, watching this dude skate. That to me was like, it had graffiti, skateboarding, homeboys, lowrider, and you could tell it was a neighborhood. That was just like, and it just seemed like it was that photo just happened, or did you set that up?
Well, I mean, I lived in that neighborhood. It's off Ocean Park Boulevard, and it's a corner right there. There's 4 or 5 different communities that identify or claim or assign. There's roll calls on a lot of corners there, and that's a point of interaction. If not dispute on occasion. So yeah, it's an active it's interesting. And the guys there's 3 or 4, I'm from one neighborhood. The guy skating is from another one of those neighborhoods. The guys with the car from Barrios Hotel, which is immediately adjacent. And this is right where 3 or 4 of these, and then there's subsets and minor sets below that would have different claims over different things. So it's a very active and you couldn't go there now. That place has all been redeveloped, and Douglas Aircraft, where they made the DC-3, was immediately across the street.
Huh. I love that you knew the neighborhoods of every individual
Yeah.
in that photo.
And he remembers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how much
but-
I believe the head trauma thing, dude.
Yeah, no,
Because
no
his
kidding.
memory is sharp as fuck. Like, he'll
is
tell you
amazing.
names, middle names, street addresses, corners. Like,
Yeah, but you're like, when you go down the street and we go out and I have a friend. He has a 36 Packard convertible. You go out and he is the mayor of the world because you're at a 36 Packard convertible.
right.
But you also know everybody who comes down into that world.
yeah, that's
And
true.
you have to be on you have to have a good footing, with you're going to encounter a lot of different people and you got to come correct or you're going to have troubles,
I got a question for you. So, in a perfect world, all right, Craig's world, what would you like if, let's say, someone said, you're gonna do this project, you could do whatever you want. What would you do? Would you do a film? Would you do a book? Would you do a television?
You have this option every morning when you wake up, Bobby.
Completely.
You're the same person I am.
But what would you really like to do right now? Because you have so much content, and obviously you're an historian. Your network is insane. The amount of people that you know and the amount of people that respect you and would, jump at an opportunity to work on a project with you, I believe. So what would you like to do next? Like
Just whatever's interesting.
Like
what
interests you?
My favorite thing, and this is what happens when you have a blunt force head trauma, the CTE, is my favorite time is you wake up in the morning or we're in the middle of the night. You don't know where you are when you wake up, and that's the best time because it's so interesting. Wow, what's this? Wow, look at that. There's a light. What is that? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm breathing. And then you look in the mirror and you go, oh shit, it's you again. And then everything turns to shit.
There you go.
So that's the project.
Yeah, there it is.
And you get to make that choice several times a day, which, some of it's critical.
So let me, and like I said earlier, Craig and I had a blast with the legacy shows, and shout out to Hurley and all the good people who invested in the show and gave us the opportunity, and nothing but love and respect for the Hurleys and, the people that helped with it. Not just, Paul and Dakota, but also JP and there were so many good people that, shared our vision.
In the clubs.
Yeah. The car clubs and, just everybody that helped. But how did you feel about the legacy shows, the first two that we did? Like, it was,
I was amazed that they had enough faith in us that somebody, essentially on one end is Nike and friends of Nike and the city of Costa Mesa and would allow us to have everybody get together and do it. And then when they came, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people there.
Yeah.
And there's a spillover that's impacting the community and we're trying to be respectful and we're parking miles away and, locations and we're ferrying people in and out and the cops knew we were doing it and they backed off and were pretty respectful. And I thought that was...
It felt very organic, huh?
Yeah, they appreciated it.
I mean, just the community that showed up, like the blend, and this is, I always talk about this, but how it all melts together and it's organic and it works because it's who we are in Southern California. Like, this is who we are. So mixing these people together is really no big deal. It happens every day. These are our communities. This is what we do. This is where we live. But when you create an event that kind of brings people together from different aspects or different cultural elements or different boxes or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And this is the type of thing that happened. And, it's something I'm super proud of, not just working with you, but being able to start legacy there and then taking it to where it is now. How you like the new one?
I thought the opening for the show was a phenomenal experience. It was one of the, and I've been to hundreds, if not, hundreds of car shows.
Yeah.
As have most of the people in this room.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, and where we live, every day is a car show. So
yeah, that's true. So what do you enjoy shooting now? I get him, and I'm real fortunate. I'm gonna tell you this, because sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, sometimes be in the middle of the day, sometimes it'll be late at night, sometimes it'll be. And Jim.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
Jim told me he's pretty fortunate to be on whatever list we're on, but all of a sudden the shit will just pop up on my phone. It's just a sick photo of whatever from Craig, and it'll be something that sometimes I gotta look at and go, what the fuck is that? And you know that it's something, and then you go, oh shit. And then you'll be
no
like,
text to accomplish
just
it.
a
There's
photo.
no context.
No description.
That's right.
Nothing. Just this photo, and he sees things in a way that a lot of people don't see, and he sees things that a lot of people don't notice. And then not just that, he'll go that extra step and find his angle and his perfect perspective of it, and the right light and the right color, and everything's perfect, and you'll get this little gift, you know.
But I like that you're speaking through images. I love it. It's a language,
and it'll stop me in the middle of my day, or in the middle of my morning, in the middle of my night, or whatever, and be like, okay, here's a nice breath from Craig, like. All of a sudden, and nobody else does that. I mean, yeah, you could get on social media and everybody's fucking doing it, but to get a personal one, sometimes it'll happen once a week. Sometimes it'll happen once a month. Sometimes it'll happen, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, whatever. But it's like your own personal IG. Cause I don't think you really fuck with IG, huh? Instagram, do you? A little bit?
I think no. Technically, I think I had to get an Instagram thing because I had there was a beautiful college graduate who was disagreeing with everything I said about social media, which was nothing. I just asked her a question. She goes, "You don't understand it," and so I got an Instagram account, and a week later, I had twice as many. I didn't know you could keep score. And she said, how did you get 2,500 followers? And I go, 25, who's following me? I turn around, there's nobody there, And I didn't do it. And so I quit. I decided, and I just did the opposite of whatever you were supposed to do with it.
I think that's a great way of putting it. If a score, where it's instead of being authentic and just doing what you enjoy, people are chasing a score.
So I quit. I haven't looked. I haven't looked at the thing in 3 years. I haven't touched it. I haven't done anything. I figure, okay, this thing will go away, and we'll all be better off. And I think it's increased, which I can't.
That's why you don't respond to my messages.
No.
My feelings aren't hurt. So now that
Jim's like, I DM.
I have. It's terrible. These people go, oh, man, I sent you. My sister was dying. I tried to let you know. And I go,
oh shit.
I go, I'm so sorry. Where did you do this? And I go, did you call like Santa Monica Pier, the payphone, where everybody goes, No, I sent it on, Instagram. And I go, fuck, I've never answered an Instagram message in my life. I have no idea how to do it.
That's funny. That's odd you say that, because I actually received something like that this weekend. One of my earliest homeboy since 40 years ago passed. And how do I find out about it? I get a direct message.
Wow.
So it's like, that's how people are communicating.
Yeah.
Communicating now.
Yeah, I just found out. So, Tim Malloy, who is godfather of Chris Malloy, who's a pretty good friend of mine, died. And, he and I were in the same high school class. I just found out about it.
Yeah.
Via somebody that walked up to me and goes, "Hey, man, we tried to send you an instant. Tim died. He was a cowboy in Washington State." I go, I didn't know.
So I only have a couple more questions, because it's really hard to get shit out of this guy.
Yeah. But you're doing a good job.
You could jump in anytime.
Oh, yeah.
One of the questions is, so these different periods that you worked in, we'll call them periods, the prior to Z Boys, Powell, Peralta, the Gap, the head trauma black hole time that we don't know about, and then and then the Hurley period, and then what was the funnest? What was your favorite time period? Like, where did you feel like really excited and like, fuck, dude, look at these pictures, dude. Like, it's insane the shit that you've seen. Like, and I've been around you when there's real some heavy hitters around you and people how much they respect and admire you and your work and just who you are. But what period was, I guess, the funnest or the most exciting for you?
I was working, there was a guy had a neighborhood junkyard on Berry Avenue and the border of West LA and Santa Monica, and it was called Berry Avenue, auto wrecking. And I worked in the junkyard there, and that was the best job I had. So that would have been, because the parts were good. And that would have been probably early 70s, 72 to 70, pre-74, probably before that book happened.
So working in a junkyard.
Yeah, and I would never get paid because I would fall in love with the parts.
Stuff. Oh my gosh. So what does motivate you? I mean, like when you...
I'm the same as Johnny. It's just parts.
Yeah.
Just parts.
You see one, and then you find a piece. He's got pieces on his car. And I remember I saw one of those when I was like 12, and I couldn't figure. He goes, "Well, I got that same part."
Really?
Yeah.
It's your grill bar in the front.
Yeah.
Wrap around.
So what is
serendipity guard?
And it's like artistic related as well. The artness of vehicles when they design them, specifically in the 30s. They have that style.
So what's your garage look like?
Oh God! And where do you keep all this stuff, dude? Like Mel's the the keeper of all this stuff, right?
I don't have. I have. Every ex-wife has got a better collection of me than me. So,
dude, you fucking leave me speechless, dude. Like just the imagery and what you've captured and that's not real easy to do. I think it was just because of my love of the streets and skateboarding as a kid and discovering lowriders. And I always say this, I've discovered lowriding while skateboarding and because that's how it really happened. But then you being able to capture it in this way, like going through these images and knowing, some of these people having mutual friends, especially J-Boy, like more than anything, like, rest in peace, J-Boy. But it's amazing what you've done, man. And there's nobody else that's even come close, in my opinion. Right. And I don't think and I don't know, you have your accolades and people that come up to you and they tell you things. And whenever your name comes up, people say the same shit. It's like, fuck, like that's the man. But you're so humble and just a badass. And I know there's something down there that you speak through your photography and obviously you're a historian and things like that. But if people that are listening to this podcast are not familiar with your images, where's the best place besides this book to see your images or your videos? And what videos and films would you recommend that they watch? So where do they look into Craig Stecyk? If somebody doesn't know, like,
it's not on Instagram.
There will be a lot of people that are going to go, who the fuck is this guy they're talking to? Why is Bobby tripping, making such a big deal over this fucking guy?
There's all the documentation of the Street Legacy show from the California Arts Center.
No,
the California Arts Center in Escondido, California.
No, like really. So this book, where's the camera? So this book, C.R. Stecyk III, Lenny Friedman. It's called Dogtown: The Legend of the Z Boys. You can watch the Z Boys documentary. There's a lot of your images in that. You can watch Bones Brigade, right?
I'm sure. Yeah,
Bones Brigade, Search of Animal Chin. What other Powell Peralta one did you do? See,
well, whatever ones have my name, the ones that have my name.
And then
on
what
them,
about? Didn't you do stuff with World Industries, Trans World?
I worked with
Thrasher,
a little Thrasher for sure. World skateboarder, Thrasher, skateboarder, surfer, surfing.
But not only
tracks, Australia.
So do you have just some crazy archive of negs?
No. Well, I mean, someplace there's probably a box of eggs or something.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But you wrote articles, too, for Thrasher, too, in addition to...
Oops.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I
don't remember reading them.
Surfer's Journal.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot. Even on your Wikipedia page, there's links to things that's been written about.
Super X Media. Yeah.
So if somebody, so I'm just saying, like, so if somebody wanted to dig into it,
we'll drop links on the video as well as all the postings for this. Yeah.
There it is.
It's the California Arts Center in Escondido, California. Has you just call them; they have all this stuff.
This fucking guy.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, when I first met him, we met at I hadn't met him in person until the show, and Craig starts saying these nice things, and I'm like, "Whoa, stop!" I said, one of the reasons I even studied art in college. Way I found my way into studying graffiti and street art and done a lot of the academic stuff I've done is because of Craig's work. So it was so great to meet him, and at the same time, he didn't care.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was so humble.
Jim was one of the few people that spoke French at the opening. So naturally, Bobby and I and Jim spoke together.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess we'll close it because it's like, I guess all I have left to say is if anybody knows Craig or knows his work that's listening to this, what the fuck we've been talking about or trying to drag out of him. If you and this is a podcast, this is audio. Craig is a visual guy. Like, yeah, he'll talk to you for as long as you want to talk to him, but it's his images that made him who he is truly. Like his photography, his film, the projects that he's collaborated on with so many legendary people, legendary brands, legendary magazines, just the best of the best. Like he's been a part of those teams. It's true. And as he sits there, he'll shrug his shoulders and be like, "Is that me?"
Well, you're a kind and generous friend.
Well, I'm honest. I'm honest. Like, I think that's what it is, and that's why we love you, Craig. Is because you are.
I appreciate
who you are.
that. Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time, and shout out to Mel. Mel, now you can listen to it. She was gonna come in here, but she said I can't go in there because then I'll end up talking too much. So, Mel's patiently waiting for you.
She's waiting for her podcast.
Yeah. And We'll hopefully see you October 1st when we close out Street Legacy.
Well, I'll be here October 1st.
And then we've got a couple things that'll be dropping in the gift store at the Street Legacy show before then. But thanks again. Jim, you want to say anything?
No, I just appreciate being here, Craig. It's always great talking to you. And
I enjoy it myself.
Yeah, and so
talk to myself all day. So.
With Johnny and Bobby, it's always a pleasure. So I appreciate you opening the doors for me today.
Someone had to let you in. We were out having tacos El Gordo. Shout out to the homie Tone. But that was it. The Lower Left Podcast. Craig Stecyk. Craig fucking Stecyk. Like, he's the man. Thank you for being here. We'll be back. We're gonna get to work, Johnny and me. We're gonna drop a couple more real quick. But thanks for listening. Lower Left Podcast, San Diego, California, 17th and Island, Tribal Click. We're out.